Okay. Let's try this out, Ed. So, if you can tell me your name.
Ed Cyples.
Ed Cyples. So, Ed, welcome to Desbrizé Museum Oral History Project, Reaching Out to Seniors. The purpose of the project is to look for first-hand stories of your life here in Bridgewater. This is to help future generations, perhaps 25, 50, 100 years from now, get a picture of the people and the events that help make Bridgewater a great place to live, work, and raise a family. So I understand that you came to Bridgewater in 1974.
That's right, Michael.
Now, what were your first impressions of the town?
The first impressions of the town, I guess I would say, I had traveled through here a couple of times in my previous job, but when my wife and I came down to have a look at the town, when I considered coming here to buy a business, her first impressions, I guess, easy for me to remember, because I said to her, "How do you like the town?" And she said, "I like it." She'd been shopping, sort of going in the stores on King Street, and I said, "You like it?" And she said, "The people are friendly here. They smile when you go in the store." And I thought, well, that's interesting. And she said, "I find it much more interesting than what we encountered in living in New Brunswick, for instance." And that certainly helped me to make up my mind, our mind, about coming down to buy a business here. And that was to negotiate with Bert O'Neill, who was the dealer, the owner of O'Neill Cheval's Cadillac at that time. The premises right on King Street. And we discussed all the pros and cons of it, and finally came to an agreement that I would buy it. And I guess my first thoughts talking to Bert were, this is a small town, and I'm not from here. I'm not from the South Shore. How am I going to be welcomed here, or what? And he said, "You'll have no trouble at all. The people here are very friendly." And of course, we found that out, and as I said, that's what helped us to make up our minds for what we wanted to do.
Well, that's great. Now, if you were to look at King Street now, where would that business have been located, and what business is there now?
Okay, now the original business there, Michael, was right about the foot of Empire Street. Doug Rodenizer bought that property in there. Doug passed away just a year or so ago. Right about in there is where the original Heb Motors was. It was called Heb Motors originally, before O'Neill bought it. And Irvy Heb had it then, and a lot of people would remember that name anyhow. He was quite an entrepreneur. And he was located in the building just about opposite the foot of King Street. And today there are various businesses in there, including a hairdresser that I go to get my hair cut.
Oh.
And there was a little upstairs portion of the building there then. And I recall going up there, that was sort of the office part. And it wasn't much, and of course, they used to, the used cars would be parked down on King Street, just a little bit south of that point, on the right-hand side where Farmers Market is now.
Okay.
That was the used car lot, such as it was. And then, of course, in that was 1974 when I was down there. A couple of years later, Mr. O'Neill had the new building built down the corner of Victoria Road and King Street. And that building, of course, is still there today.
And what building is that today?
I don't know what they call it.
Who's in there now?
Government offices, Michael, for the most part, and hairdressers and insurance companies. And Mr. Rodenizer also bought that at the time that we went out of business, when we sold our business. And he had it rebuilt into small offices upstairs and downstairs, and they're all being rented today, as far as I know, and many are government offices.
So that's where MIG Insurance is right now. As an
That's
example.
right, Michael.
The
That's
Department of
exactly
Housing is
right.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And when I came down to buy the business, that's where he was. I worked for General Motors before coming down here, and of course, as a matter of fact, I was instrumental in putting Mr. O'Neill in the business of the franchise. I was business manager for General Motors, and so I first met him in the old original building at the foot of Empire Street. Although he had a wholesale business on LaHave Street over across the river, and I don't know who has that. Probably his sons own that today. I'm not sure.
What was the name of that business?
Pardon?
What was the name of that business, the wholesale business? Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay.
But that's where we first met Mr. O'Neill to talk business, I guess. He was there. And we franchised him. We went through all the rigmarole and agreements, and then he had my friend who was with me, one of my cohorts from the company, was with me, and Bert took us down to his home down in Pleasantville for a lobster supper that night, and we thought that was a great way to start living down here.
Oh, excellent.
And so, well, I of course was there had the business for 21 years. And back in those days, when we first started out, you could buy a new Impala Chevrolet for about $6,000. Now today you would pay about $30,000 approximately. And through the years, it was very interesting. The people, we had about 21 employees, 21, 22, I believe, and we were very successful. We were there for 21 years, and in 1995 we sold the business to John Carroll from Halifax. Or John lived in Chester, really, he's from Chester, but he had a Pontiac dealership in Halifax, in Bedford, and he bought our dealership, and he also bought R.B. Simmons' Pontiac dealership in town here too. And General Motors franchised them for both the Chevrolet and Pontiac dealerships. And so I retired then and did a few things, but through those years, I guess, I forget exactly the dates, but I was involved in the late 70s in the Chamber of Commerce in town here.
Okay. Well, for the business, did you keep the original name?
No, that's interesting, Michael. No, we called it Fairway Chevrolet Limited. Fairway Chevrolet Cadillac Limited, instead of the O'Neill Chevrolet.
Okay.
Of course, when O'Neill took it over, it was Head Motors Limited. Then, of course, he changed that to O'Neill Chevrolet Limited, and we changed it to Fairway Chevrolet Limited.
Was there a reason for the Fairway?
Well, yes, there was. I lived in Moncton then, and my neighbor and co-worker, I was talking to him about coming down to Bridgewater, what we were going to do, and I'm looking for a name. And I said, and we had played a little bit of golf, my friend and I said, I'm thinking about Fairway, and there was a Fairway Boulevard where he lived too. And I said, I'm thinking about Fairway. What would you think of that? And he said, well, it certainly would be better than Boulevard Chevrolet. And I always remember that. And that's how we picked up the name Fairway.
Now, do you remember your first customer?
No, I don't believe I do.
Okay. Or were there any customers that kind of stood out?
Oh, many of them, but I'm afraid after a number of years, I find it hard to... Stuart Greer was one. He's no longer alive, I know. And there are many people today I see out in the street that still say hello and wish you were still in business, we'd do business with you, and so on. So
Oh, that's great.
we had a lot of wonderful customers.
Now, you mentioned that you had 21 employees. I'm sure they were great employees.
21 to 24, 25.
And were there any characters, anybody that stood out in any of your employees? I'm sure they were all great, but is there anyone in particular?
Oh, we had local salesmen. Borden Creaser was one. Louis Bellevaux was another one. Eric Higgins, who later went into business for himself in town, he was a salesman for us. And sales and service people were all pretty well local people, mechanics, service manager, parts manager. And I can't recall any particular names just off the, but those were salespeople. And Bev Corkum, who still I see in town every now and again, he was a parts manager at one time. And Jerry Heisler, who was no longer alive. Jerry was our sales manager originally. And then when he left, my son, who had come to work there with me, took over as sales manager. His name was Alan. And he's still at Bridgewater here, working for the Nova Scotia government now.
That's right.
He went with the new dealership that when we sold out, and he was there for about 10 years. And with the 21 years at our place, that 30 years, he often says, was quite enough for him, and he needed to change. So that was it. Yeah.
Oh, great. What was a big selling car back in the 70s and 80s and 90s? Do you remember what type of cars really sold? Or what people?
The Vega, the Chevrolet, of course, was the main one. The Oldsmobile, the odd Cadillac we would sell. Vega, I guess I mentioned, and Nova, Chevy Nova. Those names wouldn't be familiar with a lot of people today, but they were some of our cars, yeah.
Now, what was it like as a business person working on King Street? King Street's considerably different today in 2012, 2013 than it was back in 1974, 1984, 1994.
Yeah.
What are some of the changes? What was it like being a business owner on King Street?
Well, you walk down the street, and of course you knew everybody, and and I do today. I guess still know a lot of people, but it was looked much the same, Michael, except just before we came along lower King Street, where the lower parkade is on the south end of town, was all trees growing along the riverbank at that time. Before we came, because I had seen it in my travels down here before, and quite picturesque, much more picturesque than the parkades, I guess. A lot of people feel that way. And I was well known as a businessman, and I think well liked, respected. And it wasn't long before somebody was after me to join the Chamber of Commerce, which I did in the 70s, and I think 79 and 80 I was president.
So tell me a little bit more about the Chamber of Commerce back then.
Well, Chamber of Commerce back then, I could have brought a list of the presidents that went back, 30, 40 years. I have it at home. But the president preceding my being president was Richard Coughlan, who is now Chief Justice in the courts. You would know Bill, that is a counselor now,
Councillor Bill McGuinness.
Bill McGuinness. He was chairman or president around the time I was, and many of the local people in town, former mayor, Harry Cook, well, of course, he was president at one time, and most business people in town went through the chair there. It was a very interesting time, Michael. Marie Deckman was who was in the provincial government later on. She was president there too, and we had a lot of concerns about different things going on in town, shopping centers and so on. And we had more than one meeting with the provincial government people down in Halifax, and it was an interesting time. We had many interesting guests, like the Premier of Nova Scotia at that time, John Buchanan, and his cabinet members, and different politicians, different show people we would get down there to meet, to speak at our annual meetings. So I enjoyed it very much. I must have spent 6, 7 years at it till eventually you kind of get worn out. But
And what were some of the business issues affecting the Chamber of Commerce back in the 70s and 80s? You mentioned the mall as an example.
that was before the Bridgewater Mall was built.
Mm-hmm.
And we had different feelings about where it was being built, but we weren't successful in changing that.
Mm-hmm.
And but that was the main thing, was the various buildings and so on that going up in town, and to expansion. We were always watching that very carefully. Later on in the 80s, I guess, I was with the Development Commission, and that was a very interesting 9 years, I believe, I put in altogether. And I went through the chair in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
The previous chairman was Keith Wetzel, who passed away in 1985. And I was vice chairman at that time, and when Keith passed away, I took over as chairman. And we did a lot of things at that time. The mall up in the business park was built, and different businesses located to go into those offices up there. And we had a lot to do with the industrial park being established.
Now, around that time, Michelin came to town.
Michelin came just before I came down. Well, I think they're 1971, 72.
Oh, okay.
And of course, things changed after Michelin came. The population grew, and Lunenburg County, that's for sure. And they provided good employment for a good number of people. I think around 1,000 people at one point. I'm not sure exactly, but and that were people from all over the county, really, and outside the county, I suppose.
So when you were on the BDA and with the Chamber of Commerce, what development issues were important in the 70s, the 80s?
Well, as I said, the shopping centers, I guess, and Michelin itself, and there are a lot of different small businesses that were coming along, but nothing that large, nothing to compare with Michelin, of course. And the shopping center was enlarged up at where Giant Tiger is now. That was enlarged. Canadian Tire was in there at that time, if you can believe it, in that part of the, not a very big outfit at that time. Then, of course, they moved down to the location. The building is still vacant, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that was quite a big step down there for them. But and then the shopping center up there, IGA used to be there, and Sobeys used to be up there, and Ford dealership used to be up there.
Okay.
Yeah, and a fellow named Bud Rayfuse, the Rayfuse family, was the dealer, the last dealer up there for Ford, and he sold his business out to Sobeys, the building, the business. So that's when Sobeys were located up there, just the other side of High Street.
What year would that be, do you remember?
That would be, the mid-70s, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
80, 1980, something like that. But Bud's no longer alive either, but his family are very well known in town, the Rayfuse family, for years and years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed living here. When I retired in 1995, I suppose had the option of going anywhere I wanted, but we had the children living here, and my daughter was living in Sydney, and my son was here, and we liked it here, and thought no reason we shouldn't just retire here. Why leave?
So what was it like raising a family here? Were your children born here?
No, they were born in Ontario, both of them were.
So they would have come here at approximately what age?
My son was 23.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter would have been about 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she worked in, Karen, my daughter, worked in Halifax for some time before getting married and moving to Sydney. And
Okay.
my son is married here now and has a twin daughters
Right.
that
Yeah.
you might
I know them both. Yes, I do.
Michael, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we've been very happy here.
Yeah.
And you often wonder what would it have been like if we had stayed originally where we were in London.
Hmm.
When I took a job at General Motors, got moved to New Brunswick, and then we decided to come here. And we often think, well, what if we'd stayed in New Brunswick with the company? Where would we be today? But, so I have grandchildren here now, and they're in Halifax. Well, the two girls are here, granddaughters.
Mm-hmm.
I have grandsons that are in Halifax, two of them, and one out in British Columbia.
Okay.
And I have two great-granddaughters in Halifax now. So the family has grown since we moved here.
So when you moved here in '74, you opened a business, or you took over a business,
Yes.
contributed to the community that way. You were a member and a board member and a chair of the Bridgewater Chamber of Commerce. You're also a chair for the Bridgewater BDA, the Bridgewater Development Association.
Right. Yeah.
You were very busy and you contributed to the
Yeah, I
community.
think so. I enjoyed it, Michael. It was very worthwhile, and of course, I was also very busy with being an automobile dealer, being associated with we had a South Shore Dealer Association, which went anywhere from Mahone Bay down to Shelburne.
Okay.
And we all went through the chair there. I was president of the South Shore Dealer Association. And as such, then you're a director of the Nova Scotia Dealer Association, and I kind of got involved in that and ended up being president of that outfit.
Okay.
And when you're there, then you become a director of the National Dealer Association, and that's about as far as I went.
Okay.
For 1 or 2 years, I was a director, and we used to have to get down to Toronto for meetings and that sort of thing. So I spent a lot of time going to meetings locally here. Somewhere in there too, I joined the Kiwanis Club.
Okay.
We used to have our lunches, I believe, every Wednesday in the Wandlin. It was called the Wandlin then, over on North Street. And we used to sell apples before Christmas, boxes of apples to raise funds for charity. And it was a very worthwhile endeavor, and it kind of went out of existence some years after, and the Golden K, Kiwanis Golden K, was an offshoot of the original Kiwanis Club. And they are very active here today, running a seniors bus and so on, and very active.
Any stories that you can tell us about Kiwanis Golden K? Anything that kind of stands out, or some of the achievements of the club back in the '70s, apart from the Senior Wheels Bus?
Senior Wheels Bus would probably be the biggest one. They did do a lot of other little things, but too numerous for me to remember. They've been very, very successful, and that was a good experience, along with my Automobile and Development Commission and Chamber of Commerce. After I retired, I went to work for the food bank for a little while. That would be about 1996, 97. Our minister at the United Church, Reverend McLean, wanted a new manager for up there. He got after me, and I said, gee, I've just retired, and I don't know whether I want to get into that. Oh, you wouldn't have to. He said, you wouldn't have to do very much work. You just got to kind of be around now and again. That was one way of getting me into it. So I spent about 3 years there.
The minister lied, did he?
I survived, but I found that it wasn't long before I was on the phone a lot, and I was up there most every day, and I was going to meetings in Halifax, and I was on the phone a lot, and I thought to myself, hey, wait a minute now, I've retired, I've been to so many meetings in my business life and personal life that I think I've had about enough. So I did give it up, but it was a very worthwhile endeavor, and it sort of gave you pretty good insight into people and their needs for help with groceries and supplies, and that sort of thing. So very worthwhile.
Okay.
But we, I guess one of the good things about being down here, as you well know, is the beaches. Down in Pleasantville, or down in LaHave, and there are an awful lot of people that come here and see them and can't believe how clean they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's Richards Beach, and the other beaches along there. Crescent Beach is the other one. And we used to go there, and of course people still go there today. They're still just the way they were when we came here.
So you and your wife would have gone down to Crescent Beach?
Oh yeah.
What kind of car would you have driven back in the 70s?
Back in the 70s.
Now you're the owner of a car dealership,
Yeah.
so you have your choice of cars.
Yeah, I drove the odd Cadillac.
Uh-huh.
And Oldsmobile. They don't make Oldsmobiles anymore, but Cadillac or Chevrolets or whatever, and you might just get a new car and get it all ready to drive, and the next day somebody says, "Do you want to bring it in? I've got a customer here who'd like to buy it." So you'd let that go and get into another one. So it was always fun to get into new cars, and driving a Cadillac was. I thought I always felt a little out of place driving one because I brought up in very modest means, but I now, when I travel to Sydney, I don't drive that much on the highway now because I just don't feel like driving down that far.
Yeah.
And my children don't think I should be. But anyhow, I take a shuttle down from Halifax. And that's a good way to go. It's a little crowded and cramped. And I've said to people, you know, I used to drive down here in a Cadillac, and now I'm coming down a shuttle. Get the age where that's what you have to do. But.
So what would it be like, you and your wife, on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday during the weekend on your off time? Obviously, you're not working. What would it be like in Bridgewater? What would you do? Would you go to a restaurant? How would you spend your leisure time?
Yeah,
back when you came here.
We had a lot of friends at that time, different people, business people in town, many of them not alive anymore, I'm afraid, but we used to go to parties at their place, and especially around Christmas. We played a lot of bridge. My wife was an excellent bridge player, and that's how I became playing years ago. She passed away 4 years ago, so I don't play much bridge anymore, but we played a lot of bridge, cribbage tournaments, played golf up at the old course, and it was just called the Bridgewater Golf Club at that time, and it was, I believe, established in 1924, if I remember correctly, I know that. And so we played golf, we enjoyed that, and she played with her friends and belonged to the ladies' club and so on.
Was there a special party every year? Did somebody host a special party that was just kind of nice to go to because they did it up well or anything like that?
Probably the biggest party that I can remember, we went to many small parties, but the biggest party was always one that Acadia Construction put on. Art Deckman, did you know Art Deckman? Art was the president of Acadia at that time, and every year just before Christmas, he had a huge party, stag for men, business people primarily, and it was held in the curling club. And I can remember many years being invited over to that, and nice festive time of year. But you'd meet all your friends. You'd meet all your business friends and all your other friends that were invited. I think Acadia invited just about everybody in town that was somebody, or even if they weren't, they still got invited, I guess. So that was a big affair every year. And other than that, our friends from different organizations would have us down for, and we would do the same with them. And we used to love eating out. We always liked to eat out, and there was a place called the Wade House that was on Churchill Street. There's an apartment building there now. That was the corner of Churchill and Differin. It's an apartment building now. That used to be the Wade House. It had different names, Michael, but I remember the Wade House as being a place where we used to go for kind of a special dinner. And there was a nice place over in the mall at that time called the Newsroom. It was a group from Halifax that kind of ran that, because there was a restaurant in Halifax with that name. And that was a very nice place to go and eat. And there's always a lot of takeout places and so on. And the Fairview Hotel became very nice until it burned down a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was a very nice place. But, we like to do that. We used to like to go walking, nice place to walk, and go on the beach maybe on weekends, Sunday, get all tanned up and have a swim in the ocean. And kids would all get down there with us. We'd have a great time.
Do you have any memories of walking through the town of Bridgewater? Is there anything that kind of stands out? It could be the duck pond, the current duck pond. It could be anything like that. Any buildings that may not be here now, but they have a special memory?
Well, the old train station was probably the one thing that sits on your mind, that if you were to drive over there now, over the old bridge, over to LaHave Street, and turn left, well, that was altogether different at that time. There was a service station there, an Esso service station. The Pontiac dealer was there before he moved out to Hebville, the new building. And he had a body shop over there, and it was altogether different. Today you go over there and you try to imagine where the service station was. It's kind of hard to, because it's all so different. But I do remember the train station because they used to have a restaurant in there, a Chinese restaurant. And we used to go in there to have lunch sometimes. And
Now, would you walk over from your business to have lunch, or was at that
from
point?
where we were on King Street here, we would drive. Michael, but over there around the Pontiac dealership, they were practically next door to us, so we could walk down from there after having a business lunch. And it was a Chinese restaurant, I remember that.
Now, were the trains still operating at that point?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yes, they were. That was just getting near the end of their time. And unfortunately, because knew many people at that time who were engineers or whatever on the railway, and it was that was their life work, was the railway. And it was quite a change when the trains went out. I think certainly a detriment for Bridgewater to lose the train service. It's a pity that we can see that today, can't we? You know, but I remember that very well. And but I used to walk around town quite a lot, and the main street is not too different. It's just different people in the places, you know, different storekeepers and so on. Rofi's was there, and the Royal Bank was down there, where it is today, and so there weren't too many different places. Okay. The old hospital was still up there, and that was, of course, taken down when the new one was built. I guess there's a lot of little places where you can say, well, that's where it used to be. In that time, a lot of changes have been made. A lot of businesses have changed places or moved out, but Bridgewater has always been a very nice town to live in. When someone says to me, "Where are you living now?" This might be another part of the country. I'll say we're on the south shore of Nova Scotia, Bridgewater. "Oh, that's a beautiful place down there. How did you get to pick that?" And I said, "Well, that's a long story, but it is a nice place, and even today, if we drive into Halifax and come back, you can't wait till you get on the highway and get back into Bridgewater. When I lived on Greenwood Street, that's where we built a house. As a matter of fact, going back to the time we came here, Michael, I was going to mention earlier that when we moved here, we needed a 4-bedroom house. That was in 1974. And one was not to be had. And I went with about 2 or 3 different realtors looking all over, and there was just absolutely nothing. We had sold our house in Moncton, And there are lots of bungalows here, particularly in the south end, the Smith subdivision around Jubilee, well, around this in the town. But they were all bungalows. And my mother-in-law was going to be living with us, and the kids were still with us, and we needed 4 bedrooms, needed a big house. Just wasn't to be had. We stayed down here one night up in the motel up on High Street, which was at that time called the Bridgewater Motor Inn. And we stayed there for the night, and we sat in the room and thought, what are we going to do? We sold our house. We have to get somewhere. I've got to get down here to get started. And we drove around one day, then we're driving up Greenwood Street, where we finally built. And Merrill Weil lived there, and he was a builder. And the realtor that was taking us out said to Merrill, these folks are looking for a bigger house, Merrill, but we can't find it. They need 4 bedrooms at least. There was nothing. And he said, well, there's some lots across the street on Green, right, that he said I could build your house there. So I thought, well, I guess that's about the best deal we can. So we had a plan for a house and split it up. Well, and he built us a house, and it took from the fall of '74, well, the summer of '74, to February '75. In the meantime, we rented a house up on Micmac Avenue, across from the old golf course, just up behind the exhibition grounds. And we rented a place there. It wasn't very much, but it was not a bad house. It's still there today, of course. And we always enjoyed for the 1 year anyhow, the fall fair that was there, because we could see it from where we lived and hear the music, which was a little distressing sometimes at night. But yeah, that would be the fall of '74 when the exhibition was on.
So what can you tell me about the exhibition, your memories of the exhibition?
Well, I was never a great fan, to be honest with you, because I always found it a little weary and a little noisy and a little dusty and dirty, and I never really. We went occasionally, and we'd go to watch the ox pull and different things there, and the kids would want to get on the rides, but I was never a real fan. I got to be honest. I guess my wife wasn't either, so. We would often go on vacation for a week when they were here. Yeah, we used to vacation a lot down at White Point Beach in Liverpool, outside Liverpool. But we're very happy in Bridgewater, and I have no regrets from retiring here and being here in business.
You mentioned that your priest talked you into becoming the director of the Bridgewater Interchurch Food Bank back in 1995. What church did you go to? Can you tell me anything?
Church.
Can you tell me anything about that? About United Church?
Well, at that time the minister was Reverend Paul Cummings. Paul Cumming, and he was down not long ago here to an anniversary celebration we had at the church, and Paul was here. He's up in New Brunswick now somewhere, but he was the minister. And he married our daughter Karen, and I think that was the first wedding he performed in Bridgewater. Yeah,
good.
We had a reception over in the Wanlon Hotel.
Is this the church on Hillside?
Pardon?
Is this the church on Hillside?
Yeah. Well, right down below where you live.
That's right.
And so I still attend there today, and I think back I must be one of the oldest members there. And that's we did join or had transferred in '74, but the food bank was the Reverend McLean. Well, it must have been after 1995, because Paul must have left not too long after that, and Reverend McLean took over. And he was the one that got me into the food bank. So that must have been close to 2000, maybe, year 2000. I don't know what I did in the meantime, but I had attended so many meetings here in Bridgewater with Kiwanis Club and the car dealerships and the Development Commission and Chamber of Commerce. And took up meetings again for the food bank. I thought, I can't attend any more meetings. I've just had it, and I've got to start enjoying. I worked till I was 70 because I didn't need to retire at 65, and I enjoyed what I was doing, but I did work till I was 70. And in those years, I did a lot of the volunteer work with the Chamber and the Development Commission, and so I felt it's time to quit going to meetings and sit back and relax.
The people today define Bridgewater by the river,
Yes.
by the LaHaye River. So what are your thoughts, or what can you remember going back to the 70s and the 80s about the LaHaye River? Was there anything that maybe some of the businesses that were along it that are no longer there, maybe some of the recreational activities that people did on the river that they can no longer do, or just faded away? Do you remember skating? Was there skating, or was there swimming, or is there anything like any thoughts that you have or memories that you have?
The river is a very vital part of Bridgewater, a very pretty part, and it's what makes Bridgewater what it is. And before we came, of course, the new bridge hadn't been built.
Okay.
That was built in the time I was in business, because it was being built at that time. And I can go back times when, a few years, I can't remember the year exactly, when the old bridge, you couldn't go over the old bridge because of the ice flow. Okay? You had to go around up by Cookville, and it was kind of a long run to get over the other side. And I can remember coming down one time when I worked out of Moncton, I was wanting to go to Lunenburg. And I did go to Lunenburg. I was able to go down there, but I couldn't get over this side of the river to see the people I wanted to see over here. And when we were in business in Fairway, Cheval's, I could recall we had to move our cars off the bank. There's a little, right now there's a car wash place there. That used to be our new car parking lot.
Oh, okay.
And we had to move the cars back because the ice was being pushed right up on the bank, right up onto the car lot. On a real cold winter, sometimes there is quite a buildup of ice, and it can take a bridge out very easily. Not the new one, because it was, of course, concrete bridge, but the old town bridge, the old bridge, was more than once closed to traffic, and I don't think that too many years ago that they had to do some work on it to put it back into shape, and we couldn't travel for a while over there. And my wife used to be afraid to even drive over it. I said, "It's fine now; it's been fixed." And but different businesses. I don't recall. There used to be a creamery business on LaHaye Street down past where the mall is, probably around where Appleberry is. Appleberry, the building. Now, that wasn't there when we first came in. And that was a new establishment. And I think there was a creamery there at that time. I didn't know too much about it, so I didn't remember. But,
Have you ever gone swimming in the river up around Bridgewater?
never, Michael.
And
No,
you never
I've
fell in?
never. The closest I've gone swimming Bridgewater would be down at Crescent Beach
Okay.
or Crescent Beach, but no, I never. I've had a couple of nice boat rides on the river. I love the water, but I'm not
took
much
you
of
on
a
the-
sailor.
Whose boat?
Bud Rayfuse,
Okay.
when he was a Ford dealer, he was a good friend of mine, and he took us down his sailboat one summer evening, and right on down to the LaHaye Islands, I guess. And a beautiful, and just a beautiful, serene night in the summer. When, but some people do, I understand, skate and have skated in the winter along the shore, part of it. But it's a tidal river, and that you know, you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
Although, I guess when the ice buildup was there, what I mentioned before earlier, people were warned to not to try to cross over, because between blocks of ice there could be a spot that would be not frozen
Yeah.
and so not too much activity. But the ice fishing, I guess, went on down around Pleasantville. And at that time, the fishing shacks, they still do, I guess. I haven't been down there to see them lately. Were out on the ice, so I guess at that time you could have skated on the, if they could put a fishing shack and drill a hole in the ice to catch smelt.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess that still goes on. I just don't get down there anymore in the winter.
Do you remember any festivals? Were there festivals or any great big community events that happened back in the 70s, 80s?
Well,
Anything?
yeah, probably the biggest one was in the 70s, and that was called Summerfest.
Okay.
Okay?
What can you tell me
Bridgewater
about that?
Summerfest.
And what's Summerfest?
What?
What is Summerfest?
Well,
What would you do?
it was a celebration of events in town, places to have a bite to eat, and street dances and all that sort of thing, and everything you could think of. It's something that I forget who started it. I might have been instrumental because I was president of the
Chamber or the BDA?
pardon?
Chamber or the BDA?
Chamber.
Chamber,
I was
yeah.
president, and Ozzie Stiles, and you would know Ozzie.
Town crier?
Yeah, town crier. He was very instrumental in it. So Ozzie and I and Marie Deckman, who was, I'm not sure how she got involved in it, but she was there because we had a Miss Summerfest contest. And Marie was a judge, I guess, or something, I forget now. And this little girl from here, Mary Ann Smith, I don't know whether you know Mary Ann, her daughter was the winner. She lives up in the valley now, but she was Miss Summerfest. And that was fun. We had that for 3 or 4 years, and somebody used to paint stones, flat stones they'd get from down on the beach somewhere, and paint Summerfest 91 or not 91, whatever the year was, you know.
Yep.
And that's quite an event. That went for 2 or 3 or 4 years maybe, and then
So where was Summerfest held?
just all over town.
So was there a center or a main
I'd say
stage?
right downtown probably.
Right downtown?
Michael, as much as I
Okay.
can remember, there was dances being held out at the exhibition ground.
Okay.
Because I remember being out there one night when Harry Cook was the mayor. Everybody knows Harry. And I was president of the chamber, and Marie was on the committee, and Ozzie was part of the committee, and we sort of went from event to event, and we were out to, to the exhibition grounds for the dance one night. We were there, well, we went in and had a dance, I guess, to let everybody see we were there. And then there was food stands here and there, and a lot of things downtown.
Okay.
Seems to me there was a dance down on King Street here. Kind of forget now. It's
Yeah,
a lot of
okay.
years ago.
Yeah, no worries.
And I do see Miss Summerfest now and again. I see her mother and father. Donnie Smith is her father, and Mary Ann. They live in Mahone Bay now, I believe. They used to live right up around this end of town at one time. It was their daughter, and she's up in living in the valley. Now I see her occasionally. She's a lovely little girl, and she always throws her arms around me, gives me a hug, and says, "I always remember that Summerfest."
Oh, great.
I always enjoyed that. It's just something that was a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
Was a lot of fun, and then it kind of, if people get tired of it.
Yeah.
The big thing was, I suppose, was finding people to run it. And that's a problem today. I know you're very involved in town, Michael, and you know what I mean. That it's hard to get people today to get involved in some things.
What was it like back then? Was it just as hard?
Well, no, it was. I think it was easier. Like we formed a Kiwanis Club. My son belonged to the Kiwanis Club, or the Kinsmen, and it was that was a going concern for a long, long time, for years. And now it's barely existing, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
There's a K40 club that's in existence,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the graduates from Kiwanis and the Barry Rofies and all the people that they're all members of K40. My son is a member.
Okay.
He was president of Kinsman one year or two, and they. I think people kind of wanted to get involved then. And we certainly had no trouble getting members for the chamber.
Okay.
And I can recall our annual meetings when the place, Wanlon, would be packed.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have John Buchanan there as a speaker or somebody and our guest. And there was certainly no, it may not have been real easy to get people to get on the executive, to the board.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be a member and do what they could, but the Kiwanis Club and the Chamber, and we had people in the Development Commission, didn't seem to be a problem to recruit them.
Mm-hmm.
I readily went on the Development Commission because I was very interested in what was going on in the area. And, Bob Lowe, who is still here in town, do you know Bob?
I do know Bob.
Bob and Carroll Stretch, who owned the pharmacy up here,
Mm-hmm.
Pharmasafe at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They came into my office and said, "We've got a proposition for you." And I said, "What's that?" "We'd like you to join the Development Commission." And that's where I was very interested, as I was in the chamber. I was in the chamber earlier, and or still in it, I guess, at that time. But,
Mm-hmm.
and so the Development Commission really appealed to me. I thought that's, and Jack Logan was the executive director at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I was the chairman.
Yeah.
And of course, what we did then was forever trying to bring industry into town.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have too much success, really. A lot of competition in the province and other provinces in Atlantic Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have a lot of success. The business sector up in the business park was probably the biggest thing we got involved in at that time, as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very successful. And we had about, 12 work sections in each for different businesses to take over. And we soon filled those up, and it went along very well. That's still good today, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Do you remember any theaters in town? Any movie theaters, or do you remember? Was that a part of your family's life?
I think we may have gone. No, that was sort of before our time, Michael.
Okay.
It was on Dominion Street, and may have been there. I believe we were there maybe once. I can just vaguely remember being in there,
Mm-hmm.
and that was about where the old newspaper office was,
Okay.
and the Bill of Ovino Counting. In that section of buildings there, that's where it was.
Okay.
And I recall it was quite a ramshackle old place, but and I couldn't even tell you what it was we saw, and I would guess that was about the only time
Mm-hmm.
we were there. I mean, it just was. That was long before the theaters were built here now, where there's 6 or 7, and you can take your choice to go in, and we used to go there after it opened, of course, but. The one on Dominion Street was not too much,
Okay.
really.
What would be your fondest memory of Bridgewater? Is there something that kind of stands out over the past 27, 28 years, 29 years? Is there something that, one particular thing that just kind of...
I can't think of any one particular thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Many things,
Yeah.
such as being president of the chamber and
Mm-hmm.
chairman of the Development Commission, being elected to those things made me feel good to feel that they had the confidence in me to do that kind of a job.
Okay.
And any one event had so many, I guess,
Yeah.
it'd be hard to pick.
Yeah.
Many friends, and we used to play a lot of bridge with people and go to parties, and Christmas was special, I think, then. We were younger, and Oh, and going down to the beach on weekends. And
Okay.
that was always a pleasant thing to do.
Okay. Good.
But it's very hard to find one special thing, Michael. I may leave here today and think, whoops, I forgot to mention that.
We'll pull you back then, Ed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So this thing, the idea of this interview is that sometime 25, 50, 100 years from now, someone who's a resident for the town of Bridgewater is going to be watching this.
Yes.
For whatever reason. So do you have anything to say to someone 25, 50, 100 years in the future? Is there anything that you can impart in terms of Bridgewater? Is there anything that...
I would say anytime as I'm support your town. When you do business in town if you can. Buy what you can in town. You don't have to go to Halifax or Dartmouth or any of the big cities because you're only helping them to get better. And I know businesses in Bridgewater that have suffered because of people going to Halifax.
Mm.
Well, it's in the car business. We always felt we were losing a lot of business, so I know we did.
Mm.
People would come and be driving with a sticker on from the city, and we'd say, why didn't you come and see us? Well, I got a good deal down there. Well, that's an attitude that doesn't do much for your town.
Yeah.
The town could have grown better and faster and more businesses, and the more that goes on in town, the more people that are employed. And businesses in town support a lot of activities in town, and a lot of people don't know that. I can remember in a couple of years after we were in business, maybe 75, 76, two or three fellows approached me. They had a fairway share. They had a ball team, a baseball team. They wanted to know if we'd sponsor. And we listened to them and got over all the deal. And I said, yes, okay, we will. What do I have to do? Well, they wanted to get uniforms and bats and balls, of course, and that sort of thing. I said, yeah, we'll budget enough money to, and we did that. And if you're familiar with LaHave Street, right down, I go for a walk down there in the mornings, where the field is now, the football field, and I think that's, I don't know what else goes on there, football, I guess, or soccer, whatever. And that's where the team used to play.
Okay.
We used to drive up from LaHave Street, up a dirt road, and turn up into this field, and that was, of course, where LaHave Street runs into, LaHave Street is joined now by Glen Allen. So we used to come in there and go up there, and I often look over and think I can remember, they look like the same benches that were there for the people to sit on to watch the games. But we did that for 2 or 3 or 4 years maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. And my wife and I used to go over at night in the summer there to watch them play and cheer them on. And we enjoyed that. And it did a lot for these guys. There are a lot of people involved. I don't know how many now, but we outfitted them in uniforms and so on. It was a good activity. Good activity. And they had a good ball team. They used to win some games, and we did that. And a lot of things are people support in town, businesses support. I know that. I can't remember just exactly who they all were, but it's something that businesses like to do. But they can't do that much if people don't support them here in town. If they go out of town to shop all the time, I guess if everybody did that, eventually our town would just die, wouldn't it? So anybody in the future, years to come, it'll be the same story. It may be a little different, vastly different in what they can buy and what they can't buy, and what's available here and what there isn't and so on. But you can support your own town. You can in many ways. And if you do, it will thrive. And Bridgewater can thrive over the years, and someday it'll be much bigger than it is now. We're about, what, 77, 8,000 now? So it'll be about 15, 20,000 someday and right in town here. And there'll be a lot of things built because of it. There'll be new schools, new churches. Hope there'll be churches. A lot of church and membership is dropping, but I don't know what will happen there in the coming years, but that's, I would, people should support the churches, I guess, if they, but that's another matter. That's a personal thing, I guess, but certainly shopping, we'll always be able to shop for things in Bridgewater. And yes, you can go to Halifax, and you might think you're getting a bigger deal, but and 25, 50 years from now, I think it'll be the same thing, maybe even more so, Michael. Maybe there'll be more things available to do here and start a little business up. But you can't do it if people don't support you.
Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to leave with us, Mr. Cyples?
I can't think of anything right now. I think we covered everything. I made some notes here, but I don't know whether I covered them or not.
Well, you take a look and let's see. Okay.
I don't probably talked about everything.
Yeah, no.
Anyhow, it was
Take a look.
the housing when we first came here. That was difficult, and joined the service clubs, and I think it was pretty well. My thoughts are all here, and I've probably gone over them all with you.
Yeah.
If I've missed something, it's probably not too important. Yeah, it's a real pleasure to come and sit with you and discuss things.
Well, Mr. Cyples, the pleasure was all mine, I can assure you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you take care.
Thank you.
And we'll get this off there. We do this right. I think she said just close it.